Hey guys, Tekking here today to talk to you about Zoro's experience as a swordsman.
Welcome back everyone, it's time to go Steve! Today with Tekken 101, we will be going over Zoro's new power and overall journey to become the strongest swordsman. But unlike our previous videos where we solely focus on Zoro, this video we are going to delve into Red Hair Shank, who one could suggest was one of the strongest swordsmen to exist. NANI? Okay, listen. That's exactly what I'm saying. Shanks more than likely was the strongest swordsman in his prime. With that said, Zoro will be the one to surpass Prime Shanks, let alone his sensei Mihawk. To do this, Zoro has to fulfill a couple of criterias, from his swordsmanship experience, mastery of Haki, including all three types, and the relationship with his swords. Wait, not that kind of relationship. Hey. Disgusting! But before we actually explain how Zoro will be the one to surpass Shanks and subsequently Mihawk, we first need to explain and understand why Shanks is in fact a perfect comparable example to Zoro's end goal, rather than Mihawk himself. Firstly, let's clear up the fact that Shanks is in fact a swordsman, as in the data books, Oda himself described Shanks as a sword master. And as we all know, Shanks was also the rival of Mihawk when he had both his arms. In the One Piece visual dictionary is written that Mihawk looks forward to the day a sword master will emerge to surpass even his rival, red-haired Shanks. And come on, this is a clear foreshadowing to Zoro's end goal. Either way, Shanks being Mihawk's rival showcases that he was as strong as him or even possibly stronger when it comes to sword play. Let's not forget, Shanks' personality isn't that of one with ego. He's very laissez-faire and doesn't take shit seriously, especially competition with others. Also, knowing Shanks, he wouldn't ever want to take on the title of being the strongest swordsman in the world, because he is a pirate that embodies the nature of being free from such things. Whereas Mihawk is one of the only warlords of the sea whose strength and reason for being a warlord is purely based on his skills and power. Doflamingo's power derived from him being a joker, the underworld dealer, but Hancock is the pirate princess and boasts a powerful crew and island. Moria has his undead army, but Mihawk is a warlord solely because of his strength, the strongest swordsman of the sea. We saw this skill presented by Mihawk the minute we were introduced to his character, all the way back to Barati, where he defeated all but one of Don Krieg's fleet of 50 ships and 5,000 men. But obviously Mihawk's feats doesn't just end with East Blue, as he was also present during Marineford, where against the chaos of the battle and the world's most powerful people, Mihawk stayed unharmed. But forget about combat, just looking at how Mihawk travels around displays his strength. He sails around in a tiny little coffin-shaped raft. Yeah, not even a full-on boat, a freaking raft. Just the fact that he can traverse the seas filled with sea monsters and crazy weather in a raft speaks volumes to his high strength and potential. Honestly, I can go on talking about Mihawk's strength, from how he instantly cut Mr. One, whom Zoro struggled against, to mastery of Haki, which he taught to Zoro himself, or his 7-foot tall black blade Yoro. But the main point I was trying to hit on is that this Chad of a man was a rival to Shanks and likely lost to Shanks in his prime. However, we all know Shanks still possesses immense physical strength, where even after losing his dominant arm, he was able to match Whitebeard's attack using his only remaining arm. Whitebeard being the literal beast he is, granted he was old and near death's doors, but we all know how he fared in Marineford. Whitebeard, even in that state, is still one of the strongest men to live, and Shanks easily clashed with him with one arm. Whitebeard used both of his arm and a full stroke of his body. We all know from Shanks' childhood, he's seen using his left arm whilst wielding his sword. So this is even more impressive, knowing Shanks' lesser dominant arm was able to stop Whitebeard's clash. With that said, this also speaks volume to Shanks' Haki and quality of his sword. Whitebeard's Murakumogiri is recognized as a supreme grade blade. Shanks' own saber Griffin, even though its grade isn't classified, showcased its worth. And let's not forget, with this very sword and Shanks' Haki, it was able to stop Akainu's magma fist, the very fist that killed Ace. Ace. Talking about Ace, Gol D Roger's own sword, named, yes that's right, Ace, gave us the idea that Roger himself was a swordsman, and being the father figure inspiration to Shanks, it's likely he trained Shanks himself, along with the help of Rayleigh of course. So now that we established Shanks as a swords master, let's get into why Zoro is much more like him than any other swordsman. First and foremost, they both sailed the sea under a pirate king, though Zoro's comparison to Rayleigh in this regard would be more appropriate, especially knowing that he's the Dark King. But it would be fair to say that Shanks surpassed the likes of Rayleigh, and thus Shanks being taught by a sword master like Rayleigh is compared to Zoro being taught by Mihawk. Even though Zoro's goal is to become the strongest swordsman, he prioritizes his loyalty for Luffy and his own crew over this dream. In fact, Zoro's definition of being the strongest swordsman would align to this discourse. Zoro humbly bowing down and requesting Mihawk to train him is proof of this. This also goes back to Shanks' attitude towards the bandits at the start of the One Piece series. Shanks only stepped in to save his friend Luffy, and later sacrificed his arm for him. Remember, one of Zoro's most badass moments was taking all of Luffy's damage to save Luffy from Kuma, and like Shanks, Zoro depicted his ridiculous amount of endurance and tolerance to pain. Shanks, even after having his arm bitten off by a Sea King, was completely unfazed despite the heavy bleeding. Likewise with Zoro, as he himself stated, nothing happened. Both scenes were probably one of the most epic moments in this entire series. Even the notion of not fighting those who are not worth fighting is something Zoro understood. Shanks letting Higoma and his bandits mock him as a parallel to Zoro's interaction with Helmeppo picking on him when he was chained up, and even Bellamy and his crew beating on him and Luffy back in episode 147. But moving past the attitudes both pirates possess, let's come to their overall strength and how Zoro actually compares to Shanks and what it will take Zoro to surpass him. As I said at the start of the video, the criteria Zoro needs to meet is from his swordsmanship experience, mastery of Haki, including all three types, and lastly his relationship with his swords. So let's run through and understand what we know of Zoro and his overall journey. Tekken, take it away!
So first and foremost, Zoro trained at the Isshin Dojo in Shimosuke Village up until about he was 17-18 years old, is when he left the dojo to go out into the seas to become the greatest swordsman that was ever known. Not only was it his own ambition growing up, but then after the death of Kuina, his childhood friend, he also decided to take that dream on from her, who also wanted to be the greatest swordsman, okay? So he has like double the drive to become the greatest swordsman, okay? Also, he started off with an Owazamono grade sword, so, you know, it takes some skill just to wield those things, and Zoro had that already. I would imagine a lot of swordsmen out there in One Piece maybe just trained at dojos for most of their life to try to hone their skills. Meanwhile, Zoro, yeah, he did that for most of his, you know, formative years, but he went out in the world and he started fighting against some of the absolute strongest people out there. Like, he literally ran into Mihawk while he was still in the East Blue. Before he even got to the Grand Line, he was already clashing blades with the literal strongest swordsman in the entire world, okay? All throughout this, he's been pushing his limits to learn more about Haki, more about his blades, you know? So, Mihawk is, you know, very, very strong, but I'm not sure Mihawk was personally trained by the previous greatest swordsman in the world, you know, during his era or whatever, okay? Mihawk, the greatest swordsman, trained Zoro. Now, I don't like to think at this point in the story Zoro is even close to, like, you know, becoming, you know, stronger than Mihawk, okay? I mean, he's getting there, but I don't think he's at quite that point yet. But the idea that Mihawk saw something in Zoro worthy of it, and I also get the idea Mihawk, you know, he's not usually somebody that trains swordsmen, all right? He wants to have a challenge, and, you know, Shanks was that challenge for several years, but he wants that challenge to come to him, all right? So Mihawk, it's not normally what he does, but he decided to train Zoro because he saw that eventually Zoro will become strong enough in order to contend with Mihawk. Now, at the end of all this, I just want to throw something out there. I mean, Shanks and Mihawk right now in the story, two characters that are considered by many to be the absolute apex of swordsmanship in One Piece, are both around 40 years old. Shanks is 39 and Mihawk is 44, so Mihawk's a little older than Shanks. Zoro is 21, and while I would say he's not on the level of Mihawk or Shanks, he's getting pretty damn close. And considering where he was at, you know, just at the East Blue when he was 19 years old when he first clashed with Mihawk, compared to where he's at right now just 2 years later, maybe a little bit over 2 years, give Zoro maybe another 2-3 year time skip, he might very well be on the level of Mihawk or Shanks. And then hell, that's not even to say when Zoro himself is Mihawk and Shanks' age, like 40 years old, or hell, even older. You know, Rayleigh is pushing 80. He's still he has to be top 5 swordsman in the world, right? That's what I mean with Zoro's potential and his experience that he's had training over the last few years at the dojo, and then with Mihawk, and then, you know, just with, you know, fighting all the strong opponents the Straw Hats face on their journey, right? Zoro, given another couple of years, he's gonna be on that level. He withstood an attack from Kaido and Big Mom. He's well on his way, and I think, like, maybe Zoro, age 25, could clash with Mihawk, and I could see him winning and achieving that title of the greatest swordsman in the world. And it might not even take that long for him to do that, right? Well, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that little segment. This is Tekking, signing out.
Alright, thank you Tekking. Remember guys to show your support by subscribing to his channel, and don't forget to smash that like button to this video showing us that you want more collabs in the future. But now that we're finally up to date with Zoro's journey, let's get into what we've all been waiting for. Zoro's Haki and current power, which will surpass Shanks. Now, Zoro is pretty special when it comes to that department, where he can not only use armament and observation at an advanced level, but now he also possesses Conquerors Haki. This might not seem like much of a special feat to an average viewer of One Piece, as everyone and their mom seems to possess Conquerors Haki nowadays, but it's actually a pretty rare power to have, as only 1 in a million people possess its quality. We have just been seeing a lot of it recently because it's a power held by the top dogs of the world, the ones who are kingly and supreme. With the current stage of the story, it's only natural that we should see more people using Conquerors more and more. Shanks is also one of the people who are able to use all 3 types of Haki, and the community believes that Conquerors Haki is actually Shanks' speciality. That's what makes him such a potent threat in the One Piece universe. Obviously, in Zoro's case, unlike Shanks, he hasn't trained for decades with his Conquerors Haki. Zoro didn't even know he had Conquerors Haki until Kaido mentioned it to him when he managed to leave a scar on the Emperor. But with this knowledge and some training, Zoro could further refine his color of the kings and likely surpass Shanks. Just hear me out, okay? Listen, just look at the damage he was able to do without even knowing that he was imbuing his Conquerors Haki into his attacks. He dealt damage to Kaido with that attack, who is the same rank as Shanks, an Emperor. Just imagine the devastation he could present when he is trained with it. At the end of chapter 1033, Zoro, even though he wasn't trained to do so, figured out how to imbue Conquerors Haki into his sword to the point of turning it black. This was when, during his fight against the super race Lunarian, or Lunarian, however you guys pronounce it, king, he loses all 3 of his swords and he has some time to reflect on the importance they hold. Zoro reminisced about how he collected each of his current swords. We then go all the way back to the events of Log Town, when Zoro first found the Sandai Kitetsu. He realized that the sword possesses a will, as this very sword chose him, making Zoro think even further back to his village when he was a little boy. Zoro met an old geezer who used to be a samurai, and coincidentally the swordsmith of both his other swords, Wado Ichimonji and Enma. The old geezer explains to Zoro that each sword has its own will, much like people. Being a swordsman is being able to bend the will of the swords to your own. Zoro, remembering this and finally understanding what the old geezer meant, is then able to fully use and unlock Conquerors Haki. But in other words, he's able to conquer the will of his swords and fully imbue them with his own Haki, turning them fully black and surrounded with lightnings and flames. And we all know this is him imbuing his swords with Conquerors Haki because, well, we've seen what it looks like with Whitebeard versus Roger and the fight between Kaido and Odin. But only that during this awakening and imbuement of his weapon with Conquerors Haki, Zoro ends up knocking out a bunch of fodder nearby, along with King himself being shocked to see that Zoro can use Conquerors. Now, I'm not selling Shanks short here, as we all know the famous moment of Shanks entering Whitebeard's ship and pretty much dropping the majority of Whitebeard's crew due to his overwhelming Haki. However, if you watch the One Piece anime, you will have seen Zoro using Conquerors Haki to this extent. So just imagine what Zoro could do after knowing he has Conquerors and how to control it, as it's pretty clear that Zoro in this instance has finally fully imbued his sword with the highest level of Haki, where he not only fed Enma to his greatest potential but also turned them all black. The importance of the black blade holds significance, as even the swordsmith Kitetsu commented on it, mentioning how black blades don't crack and increases its overall grade. Mihawk's own sword is literally titled Yoru, meaning black blade, which is the epitome of what a blade can become. But like I mentioned earlier, Zoro is proficient in all types of Haki. In fact, the very first example and use of Haki we see from Zoro is early as an Alabaster during his fight with Mr. One, the Man of Steel. Needing to cut Mr. One, Zoro learns how to use observation Haki by listening to the breath of all things mid-fight. Whilst this isn't an outright confirmation to be the same thing as an observation Haki, it works pretty much the same way. Zoro was able to sense and feel the vibration of everything around him, letting him cut anything at all. But if you guys want to be technical, you could argue this was an observation Haki and probably something else.
Move this man!
Which, in that case, one of the first times you see Zoro use observation Haki is actually in his fight against Batman.
I am Batman!
No, not the Batman sensei from Boruto or the cool one from the comics, the Batman that's part of Kaido's crew. He sensed and countered a surprise attack without even breaking a sweat. Now with that said, I want to put out a disclaimer that I know Zoro did, use his observation Haki in many other occasions before this, and I would even say pre-time skip. But moving to a more advanced level of observation, we covered a in-depth theory explaining the mystery of Zoro's closed eye, where I went over the possibility of Zoro unlocking a third branch of observation Haki that we dubbed the Balls Deep Double Iris Observation Dojutsu. With this power, it would allow Zoro to see beyond the material into the world of the spiritual and future. But to learn more about that, you have to check out the dedicated video we did. I go over Mihawk's use of this observation Haki, even Cavendish's alter ego Hakuba, but most importantly Imusama. If you guys want to learn more about that, you know what to do, go check that video out. Because if that theory does come true or anything, slightly towards it, then it would be a huge impact for Zoro's progression in surpassing Shanks.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Now moving forward, with that said, we come to Zoro's incredible use of his unrivaled mastery of armament Haki. First seen after the time skip training with Mihawk, Zoro is able to fully imbue his Haki into all three swords as explained in chapter 785. And as we know, the more spread out your Haki, the faster it depletes it, meaning it's far harder to maintain 3 constant black blades than something like 2 of your arms. Despite this, Zoro is shown time and time again to be able to maintain his blades for a prolonged battle like it's nothing, but also have his Haki be strong enough to overpower and cut through even characters like Pika, who were completely covered in armament Haki. Even in Wano, Zoro was able to feed Enma into submission and coat it in his armament Haki, creating his cure to Ryo, Ashura, and damaging Kaido as I mentioned earlier. Now, even though unlike Luffy, Zoro has not gone through any training of expelling his Haki like Ryo, but if he does manages to figure it out, he might be even able to send out Conqueror Haki imbued attacks closing distance with his opponents, which is pretty useful especially against aerial types like King. With all that in mind, compared to Shanks, who we know has a strong force of armament Haki to easily block magma attacks from an admiral level opponent, Zoro still has a long way to go. And even if he doesn't reach the level of Haki compared to Shanks, with his skills alone and application of Haki turning into Ashura and whatnot, I'm sure Zoro will become the strongest swordsman, surpassing his sensei Mihawk and Red Hair Shanks. If you guys want further proof, make sure to watch our video on why everyone is afraid of Roronoa Zoro, which is another collab with Tekken 101. So again guys, make sure to check out Matt, especially Barry, he's really awesome. Smash that like button, ding that notification bell. Until then, we will catch you lot next time.